My neighbor cornered me by the mailboxes on a Tuesday afternoon in late November. I had just come back from my book club at the library. We'd been reading a Maeve Binchy novel nobody particularly liked, but everyone pretended to, and I was carrying a canvas bag full of returns and a small carton of milk I'd picked up at the corner store. My hands were full. My mind was somewhere else entirely. And then Wanda from 4B stepped right into my path. Wanda is 73, same as me. She moved into this building 6 years ago after her husband passed, and we developed the kind of friendship that lives in hallways and parking lots. Always warm, never quite deep enough to cross the threshold into each other's apartments. We swap recipes. We complain about the elevator being slow. She brings me persimmons from her daughter's tree in the fall. That afternoon, her face was different. She wasn't smiling the way she usually does. She was looking at me carefully, like she was trying to decide something. "Judith," she said, "can I ask you something?" I shifted the milk carton to my other arm. "Of course." She glanced toward the elevator, then back at me. "Do you know someone drives a dark green Honda Civic? Parks and visitor spot too? Every single Friday while you're at your volunteer shift?" I didn't say anything for a moment. I was trying to picture it. Every Friday morning, I volunteer at the Literacy Center 3 blocks over. I've been doing it for 4 years, helping adults learn to read, which sounds simple until you sit across from a 50-year-old man who is learning to sound out the word enough, and you watch his face when it finally clicks. I'm usually gone from 9 until about 1. The parking lot here is half empty on Friday mornings. I'd never thought twice about it. A Honda Civic, I repeated. Dark green, older model. It's been coming for at least 2 months. I've seen it. I do my exercises by the window. You know how I am. And I thought maybe it was someone you knew. A friend or your cleaning lady or something. She paused. But then last week I happened to be out getting my mail when whoever it was came back down. And Judith, it was your daughter-in-law, Carol. I remember the exact feeling of the canvas bag handle cutting into my palm. Carol, my son Mitchell's wife, the woman who had been sending me thoughtful birthday cards for 18 years, who called me mom at family dinners, who I had watched walk down the aisle in a cream-colored dress while Mitchell cried in the good way. "You must be mistaken," I said. The words came out before I even thought them. Wanda shook her head slowly. "I've met her at your Christmas party 3 times. I know what she looks like." I thanked her. I went upstairs. I put the milk in the refrigerator and sat down at my kitchen table and stayed there for a long time without turning on any lights. Let me back up, because none of this happened in a vacuum. My husband Leonard died 4 years ago, pancreatic cancer, 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end, which is about how long it always takes with that particular cruelty. We'd been married 41 years. He was a civil engineer who kept a woodworking shop in the garage and made terrible puns and always knew where I'd left my reading glasses. When he died, I felt like someone had amputated a limb I didn't know I was using to keep my balance. We had 2 children. Mitchell is 51, an operations manager for a logistics company in Columbus. His wife Carol is 47. She works in commercial real estate. They have 2 kids, my grandchildren, Owen, who is 17, and Brianna, who is 14. My daughter Francesca lives in Portland with her partner and works in nonprofit fundraising. She calls me every Sunday without fail. She drove out 3 weeks after Leonard died just to sit with me and go through his woodworking tools and cry about nothing in particular. Francesca is the one who noticed, before I did, that something was off with Mitchell and Carol. "They seem different around you," she told me on the phone last spring. "Like they're measuring something." I told her she was being dramatic. After Leonard died, there was the matter of the house. We'd owned the house in Bexley for 32 years. A 4-bedroom colonial on a corner lot with a mature oak tree in the backyard that Leonard had put a swing on when the kids were small. When Leonard died, the house passed to me outright. It was worth considerably more than we'd paid for it. Columbus real estate had gone strange, the way it did everywhere, and that house had appreciated in a way that felt almost indecent. Mitchell and Carol knew what it was worth. Carol was in real estate. She would have known down to the decimal. About 8 months after Leonard died, Mitchell started having conversations with me about being practical. He was worried about me maintaining a 4-bedroom house alone. He said it made more sense for me to move somewhere smaller, more manageable. He'd done research. There was a very nice independent living community in Westerville, he said. Very clean, very active. I'd make friends. I was 69 years old. I went to the gym 3 times a week. I had a book club and a volunteer job and a social life that I'd rebuilt with considerable effort after losing Leonard. I had no intention of moving to Westerville. I said so, politely, several times. The conversations kept coming back. Then, about 6 months before Wanda stopped me at the mailboxes, something started happening that I could not explain. Small things, at first. A set of Leonard's woodworking catalogs I kept on the bookshelf by the door moved. Not far, just shifted, like someone had picked them up and set them back wrong. A drawer in my home office left half an inch open when I was certain I'd closed it. My extra checkbook, the backup one I kept in the lockbox in my closet, sitting at a slightly different angle than I remembered. I told myself I was imagining it. That was the worst part. I have watched what happened to my mother's mind in her last years, the way her certainty dissolved and left her frightened and dependent. Every time I noticed something displaced or missing, a small cold voice in my head asked, "Is this how it starts?" I started writing things down, a little notebook I kept in my nightstand, the date, what I'd noticed, where I'd been. It helped, a little, to have the observations outside my own head, but it also frightened me. The accumulating list of small wrongnesses. Then my checking account showed a charge I didn't recognize. I do my banking at Fifth Third, and I've banked there since 1987, and I check my account every Sunday morning with my coffee, which Leonard used to tease me about. I am methodical about money, the way some people are methodical about their health. So when I saw a charge for $340 to a name I didn't recognize, a business name that looked plausible but meant nothing to me, I called the bank immediately. They couldn't tell me much over the phone. They said it appeared to be an ACH transfer. They flagged it. They said it could take several days to investigate. I hung up and sat with a feeling I did not have a good word for. Not panic, exactly. Something quieter and colder. Then Wanda stopped me at the mailboxes. After I sat at that kitchen table in the dark for a while, I did what I should have done months earlier. I called Francesca. She listened without interrupting, which is a skill she has that I deeply admire. When I finished, she said, "Mom, I need you to not say anything to Mitchell or Carol yet. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said, "and I need you to call Uncle Terrence tomorrow." Terrence is my late husband's younger brother. He practiced family law in Columbus for 30 years before he retired, and he still knows everyone who matters in the legal community here. I had been avoiding calling him because calling him would make the thing real. I called him the next morning. He came over that afternoon, drove the 40 minutes from his place in Dublin without a word of complaint, and sat at my kitchen table and listened to everything: the displaced objects, the notebook, the bank charge, Wanda's account of the Friday visits. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "The bank charge is the most concrete thing," he said. "Do you have any joint accounts with Mitchell or Carol? Any accounts where they're listed as authorized users?" I did not. Leonard and I had been careful about that. Our accounts had always been ours. "Then the question is how that charge happened," Terrence said, "and what Carol was doing in your apartment on those Fridays." He looked at me carefully. "Judith, do Mitchell and Carol have a key to your place?" They did. I'd given Mitchell a spare key the year after Leonard died for emergencies. Because that seemed like a reasonable, trusting thing to do. Because he was my son. Terrence nodded slowly. Here's what I want you to do, he said. I want you to not change the lock yet, and I want you to get a camera. He walked me through it. A small indoor security camera. There are ones now that look like nothing, like a little white cube that record continuously to a cloud and can be checked from your phone. He said to put it somewhere with a clear view of the entry in my office. He said not to tell anyone. I bought it at Best Buy the following Monday, paid cash, brought it home in my tote bag from the library. I charged it overnight. I placed it on the built-in shelf by my front door, tucked between my row of Leonard's old nature photography books, lens pointing toward the entrance hallway. You would never see it if you weren't looking. Then I waited. The following Friday, I went to the literacy center as usual. I sat across from my student James, who is 62 and learning to read after a lifetime of hiding it, and I helped him work through a passage about weather patterns, and I tried to keep my mind in the room with him and not in my apartment 3 blocks away. James noticed I was distracted. He's perceptive that way. You all right today, Miss Judith? He asked. I'm fine, I said. Read me the next sentence. I got home at 12:47. I poured a glass of water and sat down and opened the camera app on my phone. There was Carol, on my screen, in my apartment, walking through my front door with Mitchell's key at 10:14 in the morning. She went directly to my home office. She sat at my desk. She was there for 22 minutes. I watched her open my desk drawers. I watched her look through folders in my filing cabinet, my actual paper files, the accordion folder where I keep account statements and insurance documents. I watched her photograph several pages with her phone. I sat very still. Then I called Terrence. He told me to save the footage and send it to him immediately, which I did. He told me to call my bank and tell them I believed my financial information had been accessed without my authorization by a specific individual, and to request they flag any attempted changes to my account, which I did. He told me to change my lock that afternoon, which I also did. I went to the hardware store, bought a new deadbolt, and a very patient man at the store walked me through installing it myself. I was surprised to find that installing a deadbolt was something I could do. Leonard would have found that amusing. Over the following 2 weeks, Terrence worked with a colleague of his, a woman named Andrea who practices financial fraud and elder financial abuse cases, and they began piecing together what had been happening. It was methodical, what Carol had done. Over the course of approximately 7 months, she had used photographs of my financial documents to reroute 3 ACH transfers from accounts I didn't check frequently. A small brokerage account from an old employer where Leonard had once had a pension and I'd kept a residual balance because I never got around to consolidating it. A certificates account at a credit union I'd largely forgotten about. The total they'd taken was just under $4,000, but the checks were a different matter. In my paper files, Carol had found old checks from a closed account, checks with my name and routing number from years ago. She'd used them as templates, not to pass actual checks through a bank, which would fail immediately, but to open fraudulent accounts online in my name with institutions that had lighter verification. The kind of setup that, if it had gone undetected for another few months, would have allowed her to borrow against my name in ways that could have caused real, lasting damage. This had not been spontaneous. This had been planned carefully over time. When Terrence explained this to me, I sat with it for a moment, and then I asked the question I had been avoiding. Does Mitchell know? Terrence looked at me carefully. He was kind about it. We don't know yet, he said, but the preparation, the timing around the house conversations, it's hard to imagine this was entirely hers alone. I don't remember deciding to cry. I just did, briefly, and then I stopped. There is a certain point in grief where the tears feel not like release, but like a reasonable biological response to information. I had that feeling. Mitchell knew. It came out in discovery. He hadn't been the one in my apartment. The camera footage showed only Carol, but the messages between them, subpoenaed from their phones, told the whole story. Carol was the one who did the research, who accessed the files, who set up the accounts. Mitchell was the one who encouraged it, who told her the brokerage account statement was probably in the accordion folder, who said, "And I saw this message with my own eyes on a printout Andrea showed me across a conference table. Once we get the house sale to go through, none of the small stuff will matter anyway." They had been planning to petition for guardianship, not because I was incapacitated, because they believed or had convinced themselves that my refusal to sell the house was evidence that I couldn't manage my own affairs. Carol had even consulted with an attorney, not retained one, just consulted, about what evidence would be necessary to establish that I was unable to manage my financial affairs independently. The $4,000 theft, the fraudulent accounts, those were reconnaissance. They were building a paper trail that could be used to say, "Look how vulnerable she is. Look how her finances are in disarray." I had not been losing my mind. Someone had been working very hard to make it look like I was. The case was filed in Franklin County. Andrea handled it with a precision that I found, even in the middle of everything, somewhat awe-inspiring. Unauthorized access to financial accounts, identity fraud, felony theft. Because of the circumstances, my age, the planning involved, the charges carried enhanced penalties under Ohio's elder abuse statutes. There was a period of about 4 months between the filing and the resolution that I will not pretend was easy. Mitchell called me once, in those early weeks, before his attorney told him to stop. He cried. He said he didn't know it had gone that far. He said Carol had told him it was just checking in on me. He said he was sorry. I listened. I did not say much. I did not tell him I forgave him, because I did not know if that was true, and I am too old to say things I don't mean. Carol pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of felony theft and 1 count of identity fraud. She was sentenced to 2 years of community service, 3 years of probation, ordered to repay the $4,000, and ordered to pay an additional $8,000 in civil damages. Her real estate license was suspended pending review. Mitchell, who entered an Alford plea on a lesser charge of conspiracy, received probation and a civil judgment for attorney's fees. Their marriage, I am told, did not survive the criminal proceedings. I did not ask. At the sentencing hearing, the judge said something I've thought about many times since. She said that crimes against elderly people were not lesser crimes because the victim was old and might not notice. She said they were more serious because they preyed on the specific kind of trust that people extended to the people who were supposed to love them. I sat in that courtroom and I thought about Leonard, and I thought about what he would have made of all this. He would have been furious on my behalf, and then, after a while, he would have made a terrible pun, and I would have groaned, and we would have been all right. I kept the house. Owen still comes to see me. He's 17 now, thoughtful in the way teenagers can be when nobody's watching. He came over on his own about 2 months after the sentencing, drove himself, sat at my kitchen table and drank 3 glasses of lemonade and didn't say much for a while. Finally, he said, "Grandma Judith, I'm really sorry about my parents." I told him that wasn't his to be sorry for. He said, "I know. I'm sorry anyway." We sat together for a while and watched the squirrels in the backyard do their frantic autumn preparations, and I told him about the oak tree in Bexley and the swing his grandfather made when his father was small, and Owen said he remembered going on that swing, and I said yes. "I know you do. I was watching. Brianna calls me on Sundays sometimes. She's 14 and doesn't know quite what to say, so she mostly tells me about school, and I mostly listen. That's enough. That's more than enough." Francesca came out the week after sentencing, and we went to our favorite Italian place on High Street and split a bottle of Chianti and talked for 3 hours. She said, "I should have pushed harder when I said something felt off. I told her. She said exactly what she needed to say, exactly when I was ready to hear it. The camera is still on the shelf between the nature photography books. I don't watch the footage anymore. Wanda asked me once if I was going to take it down, and I thought about it. I decided to leave it up. Not because I think anyone is coming again, because it reminds me of something I need to keep knowing, that I see clearly, that when something is wrong, I notice, that my mind is sound and my instincts are trustworthy, and nobody, not grief, not love, not the slow accumulation of small wrongnesses, nobody gets to take that from me. I'm 73 years old. I installed my own deadbolt. I kept my house. I built my case without help from anyone who didn't earn my trust. I'm still here. I volunteer every Friday morning. James finished his first book last spring, a short novel, something about a dog and a road trip, and when he got to the last page, he closed it very carefully and put his hands flat on the table and didn't say anything for a moment. I know that feeling. The one where something is over and you have to sit with that before you decide what comes next. You want to try another one? I asked him. He looked up. He smiled. Yeah, he said. I think I do. I've been thinking a lot lately about cause and effect, not in any grand cosmic sense, but in the plain, ordinary way that life actually works. The way small choices stack on top of each other, invisibly, until one day the whole structure either holds or it doesn't. Mitchell and Carol didn't wake up one morning and decide to become the kind of people who steal from an old woman. I have to believe that. What they did was build toward it, one small rationalization at a time. First, it was a conversation about selling the house that was really about money. Then it was a spare key that was really about access. Then it was a visit that was really about reconnaissance. Each step probably felt in the moment like nothing much, like they were just being practical. And that's the thing about dishonesty. It rarely announces itself. It grows in the quiet spaces between what you say you're doing and what you're actually doing. What I know now, looking back, is that I noticed. I noticed long before I let myself believe it. The displaced catalogs, the drawer left open, the feeling of wrongness I kept dismissing because I was more afraid of what it meant than of being wrong. I spent months arguing with my own perception, which is the saddest kind of argument to lose, and I was close to losing it. That's what I want to be honest about, because I think people leave this part out. There was a period where I genuinely wasn't sure if I could trust myself, where every small uncertainty felt like evidence of decline, where I would have rather believed I was losing my mind than believe that my son was capable of what he turned out to be capable of. That is not a small thing to sit with. What changed wasn't courage exactly. It was Wanda stopping me at the mailboxes and saying a simple, factual thing out loud. And once it was out loud, I could not put it back. I could only decide what to do with it. I called Terrence. I bought the camera. I changed the lock. I let Andrea build the case. None of that was heroic. It was just one decision followed by another, which is how most important things get done. The thing about Mitchell's plan was that it depended entirely on me not noticing or not trusting what I noticed, or being too embarrassed or too heartbroken to act on it. It was built on an assumption about what kind of woman I was, and that assumption was wrong. I am 73 years old. I have buried a husband and raised 2 children and kept a house and built a life that is, on most days, genuinely good. I did not get here by being fragile, and the people who love you, really love you, know that. The people who are planning to take from you need you to forget it. Francesca never forgot it. Wanda never forgot it. James, my student who just finished his first novel, never once treated me like someone who needed managing. The people in my life who saw me clearly, they are the ones still in it. What I carried out of all of this was simpler than I expected. Not anger, though there was anger. Not grief, though there was that too. What I carried out was a cleaner sense of my own mind, a willingness to believe what I observe, a decision to stop being more loyal to a version of someone than to the evidence of who they actually are. Mitchell made his choices over many months in small increments, and they compounded into something that cost him his marriage, his freedom for a time, and his mother. Carol made the same kind of choices. The consequences were proportional, not poetic, not tidy, just proportional. That is how it tends to work. I kept the house. I kept Wanda. I kept Owen and Brianna and Francesca and Terrence and James and my book club and my Friday mornings at the Literacy Center. I also kept myself. That, more than anything else, is what I wasn't willing to give up.